As established in Part 1, Dani is the most obvious character to pick when talking about repression in The Haunting of Bly Manor. There's a lot to unpack. But she's not the most repressed character. While Dani's insecurities are more overt than Jamie's are more internalized than Dani's.
Everyone is exhaustive. Even me. Especially me.
So they're more damaging and harder to detect. Except, they're actually hidden in plain sight by one of her most defining characteristics.
Just out there, maybe.
She's funny. Her jokes are most frequently targeted at Dani.
Don't touch that. Just desecrate it.
Which helps illustrate one of the key differences between them. Dani knows that Jamie's teasing is meant to be affectionate, but Dani also doesn't get offended because at her core, she actually has a healthy amount of self-esteem. Unlike Jamie. Jamie often jokes around to cheer Dani up, but equally as often, she does so because she's flustered by Dani.
Can you help me get this thing off?
And rather than own it, she Uno reverse cards Dani.
Blimey.
Not because she doesn't like Dani as much as Dani likes her, but rather because she doesn't like herself as much as Dani likes her. Jamie has a difficult home life growing up, as does Dani, but unlike young Dani, young Jamie has no one in her corner.
Bullier at school, on the streets, even makes its way home. Little Dani piles on. Tries to save his own skin by blaming all the females in the family. And in 67, Lily's bolts.
And even has to become a caretaker for her little brother.
I'm just a kid. Kids can't raise kids. Forget things.
When she fails, Jamie then becomes a paycheck for abusive foster parents, before ultimately spiraling. It's in prison that Jamie finally starts to value herself, because she finds fulfillment in gardening.
You pour your love, and your effort, and your nourishment into them. You see where it goes?
Plants, unlike people, are reliable, and she finds peace in leading a so-called boring life, which is why Dani catches her so off guard. Jamie forms an attachment with Dani quite quickly. She obviously likes Dani, but their relationship is also largely built on Jamie's remarkably empathetic and altruistic nature. She doesn't expect anything in return, and even assumes Dani will go for Owen, another consequence of her low self-esteem. While Dani never really questions Jamie's feelings for her, Jamie has been so conditioned to expect people not to care about her, that a part of her doesn't understand why Dani would.
Who the hell knew?
And Jamie has also long repressed her desire for a relationship as a defense mechanism. She'd rather preclude the possibility of being happier in the interest of not incurring further pain. But then she meets Dani.
Come in.
And Dani's confirmation that their feelings are mutual gives Jamie a much-needed confidence boost. She's more relaxed around Dani, more playful.
Just a bit like you're trying to scandalise the village. Can't say I fault the general principle.
But she still waits for Dani to make the next move, and even double-checks with Dani that it's okay with her.
Sure. Yes.
Then, and only then, does Jamie finally, and rather dramatically, let her inhibitions go. Only to get burned. Jamie knows she can't really be mad at Dani.
You were just telling me. Literally telling me that you weren't up for this.
And even tries to reassure her.
It's all good.
But the incident nonetheless seems to confirm Jamie's long-held assumption that she will never be anyone's priority. And her guard goes back up.
Sometimes people just need to be alone.
Dani's charm, sincerity, and persistence manage to break it down again, though. To the point that Jamie finally makes her first move. But even that is partially defense mechanism. Jamie knows what she's committing to on her end, so she evens the scales.
I figured I'd take you some effort.
And gives Dani the chance to change her mind. She acts against her own self-interest, and yet also in service of it. If Jamie's going to be hurt, she'd rather rip off the band-aid, as it were.
Skip to the end.
But for the first time, she doesn't have to. In the end, repression is actually part of what makes theirs such an exceptional love story. Dani and Jamie are only able to break free from their respective forms of repression because of their love for each other. It's because of Jamie that Dani learns to be herself, to focus on what she wants, instead of what other people want her to want. And it's because of Dani that Jamie learns to be open, to accept that the work of loving someone is worth the pain of losing them.